Hello, and thank you for joining us again at Voice of Rohingya Radio. We are a registered nonprofit coming to you from the state of Oregon in the United States of America. We'd like to remind you to take a moment and join our Facebook page and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's an easy way to show your support for the program, and it allows us to continue providing the latest news through our exclusive interviews, reports from inside the border, and reputable sources from around the world. Voice of Rohingya Radio is the only news source of its kind in the English-speaking world, bringing you the latest news in a convenient format and keeping you informed and involved. You can listen to our program every week, Sundays at 6 p.m. Pacific Time, by visiting our new website at vorradio.org, where we'll keep you up to date with our past and future program. It is the 1st of February, 2015. For Voice of Rohingya Radio, I'm your host, Zach Taylor. Today we have the pleasure of speaking with the director of the Arakan Rohingya Union, Dr. Professor Wakar Uddin. Dr. Uddin, thank you so much for joining us again.
My pleasure.
So, Dr. Uddin, I know that you were in Washington, D.C. a couple of days ago. Can you tell us anything about your visit?
Yeah. I was in Washington last week. We had meetings with the State Department officials and also people in Congress, U.S. Congress. There are some confidentiality in certain issues that were discussed in Washington in those meetings, but here I will be able to tell you some of that we discussed in the State Department particularly. Most importantly, first I've expressed our great appreciation to the U.S. government that has finally secured the release of Dr. Tuang in Rangoon. They all are appreciative of ARU's press statement a couple of weeks ago, not only about appreciation for the efforts by the international community, but also thanking President Thein Sein for his just and fair decision on this. It was really a long and arduous journey to get his release, and it could not have happened without involvement by the U.S. government. Congressman Aaron Chalk, the State Department team headed by Secretary Kerry, including Assistant Secretary Tom Malinowski, Ambassador Derek Mitchell, and many other officials in the State Department were instrumental in the release. Actually, I will also have the same message for the United Nations officials when I meet with them shortly, probably next week, early next week. In fact, there was a huge international effort, and I'm very glad that we in ARU was able to coordinate with these officials during the past 2-3 years before his release, Dr. Tuang's release. It was a very difficult issue. We knew we should have the resolve, and we had to sustain the momentum, because we were aware from the very beginning that the government of Burma is the key, not the Rakhine. When the government does something boldly and correctly, there's nothing to worry really about Buddhist Rakhine getting upset. We know how powerful the government is in Burma, and it is unfortunate that the government often uses Rakhine as scapegoat when it doesn't want to do something. So that was about particularly, I was thanking them about Dr. Tuang's release.
And were you able to discuss the situation on the ground in Arakan State?
Oh yeah. That's very important. I often update them with written reports or in the meetings, a current situation going in Arakan State. So in this meeting, I gave them the report from the ground that I received, particularly the ongoing atrocities being committed by BGP, the Border Guard Police. That is actually the grandfather of former Nasaka when it comes to atrocities. They're the master in atrocities. The Border Guard Police is not guarding the border. Although the name said Border Guard, they are not guarding the border, but continuing the unfinished dirty job of the Nasaka. Actually, BGP has become worse than Nasaka when you really look at what they are doing now. terrible, terrible situation on the ground. Other issues were the upcoming national elections, in Burma in 2015, this year, Rohingya political parties and candidates from political parties or other parties, the big issue of white card voters, Rohingya IDPs, and the refugees. These are all discussed. Before I go further on this, I would like to clarify something here in our conversation. It has been reported in the media, but this issue I'm going to talk about, but it was also vastly misinterpreted. There has been a lot of concern in the U.S. administration here in Washington about the situation of refugee camps in Bangladesh, Thailand, Malaysia, India, and IDP camps inside Arakan state. There have been a lot of concern. Their condition, dire situation, terrible, terrible situation there. What I understood from the meeting in Washington that, reports of efforts by U.S. and others in the international community for resettlement. The word I stress, resettlement. The resettlement of Rohingya refugees and IDP from camps in Rakhine State. This resettlement of Rohingya that U.S. officials and international community is talking about is not referring to settling them in a third country. This has been misconstrued. When they say resettlement, they're talking about settling them in their own place. You may carefully listen to the word resettlement. That means settling them back in their place where they belong, where they came from. That is Arakan. The word resettlement can be misconstrued, really. Again, I'm re-emphasizing that. Resettlement of Rohingya, IDPs, and refugees, that is strictly the repatriation, return to their home villages and towns in Arakan. Let me give you an example. Last year, the Burmese government had an agreement with the government of Bangladesh to let certain number of Rohingya refugees from Bangladesh to return to their homes in Arakan. Resettlement is precisely that. That is resettlement, taking them back. Another word for repatriation. Rohingya people are scattered in the Southeast Asia region. They need to return to their homes in Arakan. It means returning to their birthplace, their own villages, but not to Rakhine villages or any other locations in central Burma. They didn't need to go there. They are not interested to go anywhere else, but their own homes and own villages. They must return to their native places. So that's something that I want to clarify that the resettlement word had been misconstrued in the media and other places. It is not what they think. It is return of Rohingya refugees to their own place, their homes. Other things in Washington, there was a very good discussion on dialogue and finding avenues for peaceful coexistence between Rohingya and Buddhist Rakhine. Again, Buddhist Rakhine are not the main concern here. Our concern is the government of Burma. If the government does not oppose to the dialogue between Rohingya and Buddhist Rakhine, and rather encourage the Rakhine to engage, and then I don't think there's any likelihood that it will not happen. There will not be any obstacle. So I think that is a very important point that government of Burma has to be willing to facilitate, to get involved, and to encourage the Rakhine for dialogue.
Dr. Uddin, I know that working to repeal the draconian 1982 citizenship law in Myanmar has been a very high priority. Were you able to discuss the citizenship issues at all?
Yeah. This is a hot issue, a verification, so-called verification. I don't know what they are verifying. Like somebody came from somewhere else, they are verifying. No, this is verification is really misuse of term, but they're using it anyway. And verification and citizenship process. The most sensitive issue in the meeting was the identity of Rohingya, the name of Rohingya. We discussed that a lot. There's not a single country in the world that you can see that says or agrees, that with the description of Rohingya by Burmese government and Arakan as Bengalis. Not a single country in the world will agree to that. Rohingya is recognized by all countries around the world across the board, and not even a single country agrees with Burma. They are the loner, and they are the pariah. They are defying the views and the stance of the global community of nations. My question was, in the meeting, we're discussing, if an ethnic name and religious faith is so toxic for the Myanmar government, and then why even not bother with the race or religion then in the process? Just leave it out. It's bothering them so much. Somebody who, which religion they are from, which race they are from, just leave it out. It's bothering them. The government of Burmese, the government of Myanmar should solve the issue of peace and stability instead dragging this into race and religion. They should not be just continue to drag this issue with describing race and religion, but rather focus on peace and stability. That's what we want the Burmese government to think. That was basically what I would like to discuss here with you, and about Washington. There are other issues have sensitivity, so I'm not going to go into that on this conversation in this interview.
Of course, I understand. Now, I've heard that you just returned from a trip to Asia a couple of weeks ago. What can you tell us about that trip?
Yeah, I was overseas a couple of weeks ago and came back. I was there a couple of weeks. Again, this is confidential, and there's sensitivity issue in this, and I will discuss with you, but a little bit in the nutshell, and superficially, not deep into details. I was in Malaysia and Singapore. Particularly, trip to Singapore was strictly confidential. So here, I will cover a couple of things on my trip to Malaysia. In Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, I was hosted by a special envoy, Dr. Hamid Albar, a special envoy to Myanmar, OIC special envoy. And I had also the opportunity to meet with senior Malaysian government officials from the Malaysian ministries. During those meetings, when I was talking to them, it was very frank. I was really touched by the hospitality and the frank conversation, particularly with one minister. I will not mention the name here. It wouldn't be good diplomatically, mentioning the name. He was very concerned about Rohingya people, particularly on the humanitarian ground. The Malaysians are in a very difficult situation because they cannot force the Rohingya out, and then they cannot stop the constantly incoming Rohingya refugees, because Malaysians are really naturally very soft-hearted people, and on the humanitarian ground, they have a lot of feeling for Rohingya. But on the other hand, how much they can take, how much they can absorb. They are having difficult time coping with this regular flow of Rohingya coming into Malaysia and illegally. So, if we continue to do, the Rohingya people continue to do that, and we will be becoming a big economic and social burden on them, on Malaysians, government of Malaysia, people of Malaysia. Malaysia is their country, a country for Malaysians, but we just cannot continue to impose on them because they are too generous. They are too generous. Malaysians are too generous. Doesn't mean that we should continue to become a burden on them. Ambassador Hamid Albar and other ministry officials have one thing in common, along with the international community. That is, we, the Rohingya people, sitting with Buddhist Rakhine to find a mutually agreeable solution. They are very firm on that. We have to find a mean to start a dialogue and come to understanding and to live peacefully together as we did before many years ago, although it was not perfect, but we still live together. Again, I made it clear to the Malaysians, the Ambassador Albar and the ministry officials, that the key for this is in the hands of the government of Myanmar. They can make this dialogue happen, or they can destroy it. They can ruin it. They can become a stumbling block because they can pressure Rakhine not to cooperate from behind the scene, pressuring them not to do it. So they control Rakhine. So it's up to the government actually whether Rakhine will sit with us or not, because they control Rakhine. Look at the recent example. Dr. Tung was released because the government decided to release. He was released, and what did Rakhine do? Nothing, right? So the same thing here. So that's I've asked the Malaysian officials to use its bilateral relations. Malaysia has a very good bilateral relations with Burma, and Malaysia can use it as a leverage diplomatically to solve this issue.
Now, are you planning to go overseas again anytime soon?
Oh, yeah, I have. It's non-stop, actually. One thing after another. I am actually planning to leave U.S. for Europe and Middle East very shortly, and within few days. This is purely on diplomacy. At the end of the trip, this upcoming trip, in the last leg, I will be in Saudi Arabia after Europe and the Gulf states. I was invited to attend the anti-terrorism conference at the World Muslim League headquarters in Mecca, Saudi Arabia, sponsored by the government of Saudi. Rohingya are peace-loving people, as you know. It is the only one of the ethnic minorities in Burma, few ethnic minorities in Burma, that does not have armed conflict with the government of Burma. So we are not fighting. We just wanted to have dialogue. And Islam is a religion of peace, and we are Muslims, and Muslim Ummah embrace Rohingya people for their stance in finding solution to the Rohingya political and human rights issues through all non-violent means. I stress that, non-violent means. I will make sure at the conference in Mecca that our message of nonviolence echoes and resounds in the conference. I will make sure that message goes out.
Now, Dr. Uddin, stop me if I'm moving into a more sensitive area, but you've released a press statement following the arrest of Global Rohingya Center workers in Bangladesh a few weeks ago. Would you update us on ARU's efforts and the work of the international community on that issue?
Oh, yeah. I will be able to discuss that very openly, although that has been a very sensitive issue in the past, but we have resolved the issue now, so we can discuss that openly. We had a press statement while we are working very closely with the international community to get the release of our GRC people in Bangladesh, who were unjustly arrested, detained, and interrogated, and kept in the detention for many days. Just like Dr. Tung Aung's case, we made tireless efforts for their release, for the our GRC people's release through all the channels. You name it, in Washington, Geneva, Riyadh, and even Gulf states. We understand the government of Bangladesh has its own security concern, and we will not allow anything which is contrary to its national security interest and good bilateral relation with Burma. However, in this case, our GRC people are not involved in anything that is contrary to the national security of Bangladesh, as well as any other lawful conduct. They are not doing anything unlawful in Bangladesh. So they were simply there to find avenues to provide humanitarian assistance to Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh. The situation is very dire, in Bangladesh. Actually, that winter time was there at that time. Still is winter there, and there's no blanket, short of blankets and other supplies. So they were there to just to find how they can help. So that was their purpose of their trip. Unfortunately, there was reportedly a third party from a neighboring country. I will not name the country, but from a third neighboring country that got involved in this, leading to the arrests and the judicial process of these GRC folks in Bangladesh, going to court, and other things, which were not really necessary. These are humanitarian workers. The answer is clear now. They were innocent from the very beginning, and then Bangladesh authorities had no choice but release them. ARU expresses its gratitude to government of Bangladesh for doing the right thing, and we appreciate that. And then we assure the government of Bangladesh that we will fully cooperate with them if there is any concern or issue with regards to their national security in Bangladesh, or security in the border region, for that matter.
Now, Dr. Uddin, you've been a welcome guest on Voice of Rohingya Radio several times now. I was wondering if you'd be so kind to give us your views on the program.
VOR Radio is really a landmark for Rohingya people. Considering the extent of violence and ethnic cleansing is Rohingya in Burma, there has been very little media coverage on that past 2-3 years, particularly during the violence. Only, sporadically you have seen on BBC, Al Jazeera, and some media in Middle East, Saudi Arabia, and Gulf countries. You have seen them, but they are not much widespread, In fact, there were even some negative publicity, false reporting by some media, such as RFA, Radio Free Asia, here in Washington. Okay, that RFA is saturated by Buddhist Rakhine, as we know. And then some media in Burma, they were doing negative publicity about the violence and all ethnic cleansing in Burma in 2013 and 2012 and 2013. Now we have a platform in the West that we did not before. We are on the mercy of other press, news outlets and media outlets. And we didn't have anything of our own. Now we have one, so this is a good beginning. We will have to expand it and to continue to deliver the message globally, how serious the issue, Rohingya issue is, the depth and width of the problem in Arakan and beyond.
Well, as you've mentioned, Voice of Rohingya Radio is planning to expand our program, and we've actually welcomed another member on board, Michael Koda, who's working diligently as the marketing director. Throughout the year, he will be reaching out to faith-based community services around the world to garner support for the program. Could you provide a message for anyone thinking about supporting our program?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. This is very important. I'm so glad that Michael has joined the VOR. He is a great asset for the Rohingya people. I would like to express my great appreciation and thank to Michael for his undertaking of such a noble work on humanity. My message to all the faith-based community, others in international community in general, and even those people of good sense in Burma, that the plight of Rohingya in Burma is an issue of humanity under attack. Today it is Islam, today it is Muslim, today it is Rohingya. But tomorrow it can be Christians. They have been happening with Christians in the past, but not to the extent of what's happening to Rohingya, but it can happen to Christians, what is happening to Rohingya today. In fact, this week we have already seen the taking down of the cross from church in Burma. So there are signs, disturbing signs of these radicals in Buddhist community started to go after the Christian, faith. Beside the conflict they had, armed conflict they had with the government, that's different. Now we're talking about religion here. My message really is the unified stance in the international community on Rohingya and other ethnic issues in Myanmar has to be sustained. Okay, international community has come together in support of the Rohingya cause and other ethnic cause, Christianity, Kachin, Kaying, Karen, Chin, and others. They came together. Then it might have to be sustained and to bring the peace and stability and communal harmony in Rakhine State, Arakan, Kachin State, Chin State, and Kaying, and other areas in Burma. And it's the duty of the international community and all peace-loving people to bring peace and stability and communal harmony in these regions in Burma. We, the Rohingya people, who live in peace, who love to live in peace, are on the right side. We are on the right side because we want to live in peace. But those in Burma who are preaching hate in the sermons and committing violence are on the wrong side because they are committing violence. So they are on the wrong side. We ask the international community to continue to stand by the Rohingya people for the just cause because we are the victims, and the other side is the perpetrator of the violence. So my bottom line here, underlying message is the international community staying together and maintain the momentum and to bring the peace and stability in minority regions in Burma.
Dr. Uddin, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for your time and all the support you've shown this program.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
All right. Take care and safe travels to you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Once again, that was Professor Dr. Wakar Uddin, Director General of the Arakan Rohingya Union. And you are listening to Voice of Rohingya Radio. Thanks again for listening to Voice of Rohingya Radio, a weekly news program bringing you up-to-date information about the Rohingya people in Myanmar. You can catch our broadcasts every Sunday at 6 p.m. Pacific Time here in the United States at youtube.com/VOR Radio, or you can join our page on Facebook to find more information on the program. For Voice of Rohingya Radio, this is Zach Taylor, signing out.